Hello everybody! Today we are going to use balloons to make a sculpture of heart. 3D sculpture, balloon woven heart. Before we start making the sculpture, I want to say many thanks to my Facebook friend Rita Tavares for kindly sharing with us this beautiful design. I'm going to use 5 balloons of different colors to make this sculpture. Let's inflate all balloons leaving about 8-inch flat tails. We're going to twist all bubbles for this sculpture of the same size. In this example I'm going to make it less than 1 inch long, each bubble. Let's twist a chain of the first 15 red bubbles. Rita Tavares made very good instruction for this sculpture. In her original instructions, Rita Tavares used 10 balloons to make the sculpture. As you know, I like to use the least possible number of balloons to make all sculptures, and so I come up with this instruction where we use 5 balloons instead of 10 to make the same heart. Using less balloons for this sculpture makes it rather more complicated, surprisingly. In order to make this instruction easy to follow, I use different color balloons. But of course you can use one color balloons to make the same heart. And now we have to lock both ends of the chain of the first 15 red bubbles in one lock twist. And then we cut off the rest of the red balloon tie off the end. We're going to use the red balloon to make the frame or the sides of the heart. First we're going to prepare all balloons and then we will assemble them all together in one sculpture. Now let's twist a chain of 20 blue bubbles. Once again I want to remind you that we are making all bubbles of the same size for this sculpture. Making bubbles of different sizes will distort the sculpture. And now let's lock both ends of the chain of the first 20 blue bubbles in one lock twist, cut off the rest of the blue balloon, tie off the end. Now we twist a chain of 12 pink bubbles. And then we have to lock both ends of the chain of the first 12 pink bubbles in one lock twist, cut off the rest of the pink balloon, tie off the end. Now let's twist a chain of the first 6 white bubbles, lock both ends of the chain of the first 6 white bubbles in one lock twist. And then we have to twist the 7th soft, about 2 maybe 3 inch long white bubble. Later we will cut the 7th bubble. Now let's twist a chain of the next 6 white bubbles, and then we'll lock both ends of the chain of the last 6 white bubbles in one lock twist. Cut off the rest of the white balloon, tie off the end. Then we have to cut the 7th white bubble. As a result we will have 2 separate loops made of 6 bubbles each. And now we have to twist a chain of 20 yellow bubbles. We have to make a lot of bubbles to make this sculpture. Now let's lock both ends of the chain of the first 20 yellow bubbles in one lock twist. Cut off the rest of the yellow balloon, tie off the end. Also we can use scissors to trim off ends of the balloons. Now let's lock both ends of the chain of the first 10 yellow bubbles in one lock twist. We have made 2 loops, each made of 10 bubbles. Take 2 bubbles from each loop located next to the lock between chains. Total of 4 bubbles. Lock both ends of this chain of 4 bubbles in one lock twist. Use scissors to trim off ends of the pink balloon. We have a loop of 12 pink bubbles. Let's lock both ends of the chain of 6 pink bubbles in one lock twist. Now we have 2 loops of pink bubbles. Use scissors to trim off ends of the red balloon. The front side and the back side of our sculpture will look exactly the same. That is something I want you to keep in your mind. Here's our blue balloon. Let's lock both ends of the chain of 10 blue bubbles in one lock twist. We have made 2 loops, each of 10 bubbles. Let's take a chain of 4 blue bubbles from each loop, locate it next to the connection between loops, and lock both ends of the chain of these 8 blue bubbles in one lock twist. As a result, we will have a loop of 8 bubbles. That will be the lower part of the heart, and the loop of 12 bubbles will be the upper part. If you look from this side, it looks like a letter X. Here's a bottom view, and this is the top view. Now we have to put all balloons together in a heart shape. Let's start first with red and blue balloon. The blue balloon has 2 loops. The small 8 bubbles loop is the bottom, and the top loop has 12 bubbles. The locks between loops stays one on the front side of the sculpture, other one on the back side of the sculpture. Place red balloon inside of the loops of blue balloon. Force and lock 3 red bubbles between 8 blue bubbles of the bottom loop. Now let's force a chain of the next 4 red bubbles between blue bubbles of the top loop on the left side of the heart, and then we do the same on the right side of the heart. As a result, we will have chain of 3 red bubbles at the bottom, chain of 4 red bubbles on each side of the heart, and chain of 4 red bubbles on the top side of the heart. And the front and back side of the sculpture will look exactly the same. Balloons hold each other thanks for the tension between bubbles. And now basically we have to interlace the rest of the balloons between each other in order to make the sculpture. Now let's put our sculpture inside of the yellow balloon. We have 2 loops of yellow bubbles. The bottom loop made of 4 yellow bubbles, and the top loop made of 16 yellow bubbles. Let's force the red bottom bubble through the loop of 4 yellow bubbles. If you made all bubbles of the same, less than 1 inch size, then the bubbles will hold really tight, especially at this, the bottom point. Here we have the bottom view. Now we have to lock ends of a chain of 6 top red bubbles between yellow bubbles of the top loop of 16 yellow bubbles. As you can see in this example, the chain of yellow bubbles is going right below the chain of blue bubbles. It is separated just by 1 red bubble on both sides of the heart. Now we have to fix yellow bubbles between corresponding blue bubbles on the front and the back side of our sculpture. Different color balloons makes it much easier to see how we assemble the sculpture, how and where we interlace the bubbles. Once you learn to do it with different color balloons, you could try to do the same with one color balloons and see yourself how easy it would come then. By the way, it would take 79 bubbles to make this whole sculpture. We have to lock each bubble between other bubbles. It really takes time. You better work carefully avoiding mistakes than make mistakes and try to fix them later. It would take much longer. Now let's attach the pink balloon at the top of our sculpture. We lock the connection point of 2 pink loops between 2 red bubbles at the very top of our sculpture. Then we have to roll 1 loop of 6 pink bubbles over one side of our sculpture to lock the end of a chain of 5 red bubbles if you start counting the red bubbles from the very top of our sculpture. Now we have to lock pink bubbles of this loop between corresponding yellow and blue bubbles on the front and the back side of our sculpture. We already fixed 1 pink loop. Now we work the second loop of 6 pink bubbles on the other side of our sculpture. We are working it in exactly the same way. Roll the loop of 6 pink bubbles over this side of the sculpture. Lock it with the end of the 5th red bubble, counting red bubbles from the top of the sculpture. And then we lock the rest of the pink bubbles between yellow and blue bubbles on the front and the back side of our sculpture. We have already made the skeleton of the sculpture. You already can see how our sculpture getting desirable shape of heart. You may already notice that our sculpture is empty inside. It's hollow. We can use it as some sort of gift wrap, heart-shaped box. While we assemble the sculpture, we can place some surprise or gift inside of this sculpture. Something soft, not heavy, definitely not sharp. And now we have to attach 2 more white loops. Let's use scissors to trim off ends of the white balloons. We have to roll 1 loop of 6 white bubbles over one side of the sculpture to lock ends of a chain of 3 red bubbles. It's going to be the second, third and fourth red bubbles counting from the top of the sculpture. Let's stretch the white loop slightly and roll it over one side of the sculpture. Once you lock ends of chain of red bubbles, then you have to fix white bubbles between blue bubbles and yellow bubbles on the front and the back side of the sculpture. In exactly the same way we have to fix the second loop of 6 white bubbles on the other side of the sculpture. It takes time to make this sculpture. No matter how long it would take you to make it, in result you will have very impressive, nice looking sculpture that you can use as a decoration, as a toy, to play any kind of games with balloons. You can use this sculpture instead of a ball. It is surprisingly very durable. In my experience, about 200 pounds heavy man can sit on top of this sculpture without actually damaging the balloons or even the shape of the sculpture. Of course, men, especially kids, can break everything, so please don't give it much try. Congratulations, we have made 3D woven heart. Here's the top view, the front view, the side view. Have fun and happy twisting!